Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you've never been here before. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it. Today we are doing a book review. Now, I've never done a video book review before. I do have book reviews on my website. I'll link those in the description below. But today we are reviewing Harmony's book, Wicca. Um, if you have been on YouTube or anything of the sort, you probably recognize her, Harmony Nice. She has her own YouTube channel. I will leave her link in the description below as well. And yeah, I got this book a couple of months ago, and I just got around to reading it because life is crazy. But yeah, I finally read it and I want to give my opinion on it. And my opinion is that I didn't like it. So I want to tell you why. Out of my star rating, I give Harmony's book a 2 out of 5 stars, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about the pros and the cons of this book, the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like. So the first thing that I liked about Harmony's book is that it's very personal. So before you even hop into the content of the book itself, she has this whole preface about her story, how she came to Wicca, and really how she started exploring it. And throughout the whole book, it's very personal. She does attempt to write it in a manner that it's just like sitting down and having a conversation with a friend, which I really appreciate when it comes to books like this sometimes. So in Harmony's particular case, I do enjoy that fact about her book. Something else that I liked about Harmony's book were the illustrations, and I'll pop some pictures up here on your screen of a couple of my favorite uh, illustrations and images from within her book. Now these bring Harmony's style to her book. These illustrations, in my opinion, really embody who Harmony is as a person and as a Wiccan. Now, full disclosure, I have watched Harmony's videos for a long time. I think she's a lovely person, and it's in this manner that I see Harmony in this book and in these illustrations. Now, there are two specific sections in Harmony's book that I really liked. The first one is her section on a book of shadows, and then the second one is chapter 22, and it's called Small Changes. So in her section on what a book of shadows is, she has a lot of good information about creating your own book of shadows and really making it personal to yourself and your practice. And I really appreciate that she didn't just hop in here and say that you need to have this, this, and this in your book of shadows, or else it's not a book of shadows. Okay. Now, with chapter 22, Small Changes, I feel like this was a really important chapter that she included in her book, and it's something that I don't see talked about a lot. And chapter 22 is called Small Changes. One thing that I see with a lot of baby witches and new pagans and Wiccans is the fact that everyone is always so overwhelmed with the amount of information, the sabbats, the esbats, deities, and herbs, and it's so much information, and it can all be so overwhelming. And Harmony's chapter called Small Changes is really about how you can begin to incorporate all of these different aspects into your practice, one thing at a time, and that you don't need to hop in with both feet all at once, because it's just going to create havoc for you and chaos. And going through and doing these things one step at a time in small changes in your life really can help you to encompass and embody these beliefs as a person and live your life the way that you want to and the way that you embody your practice. So that, I think, was a really important chapter, and I'm really glad that she incorporated that into her book. Now, as far as the cons and the things that I didn't like about Harmony's book, don't hate on me, okay? Harmony is a great person. She's a lovely human being, but I just didn't like a lot of the aspects of her book, and I want to tell you why. So the first reason that I'm not a big fan of Harmony's book is the lack of sources. Now you can see in this picture here, these are her sources. She has 4 books listed here as sources. 3 of them are written by Scott Cunningham, and the other is The Modern Guide to Witchcraft by Skye Alexander. She has 4 websites. She has 5 YouTubers. She has 5 Instagrammers and a hashtag and some shops. So, with the amount of information that is contained within Harmony's book, I expected more resources. I expected more sources and more variety. I mean, 3 books by Scott Cunningham and 1 other book by another person, that's not a lot. And I know she included some websites. Some of those websites are familiar to me. And I really think that Harmony's book is just a basic surface level intro to Wicca type of book. There's nothing really that digs deep into the theology, into different practices and the spirituality and even the deities within Wicca. So something else that I find as someone who edits and writes for a living is the editing of the book. Now, this isn't on Harmony because she's not an editor. She wrote the book, but she didn't edit it as far as I know. But the editing of this book is awful. So what I mean by that is flipping through the book is split into 3 parts. The first part is what is Wicca, the second part is why explore Wicca, and the third part is how to get started. Like, that's fine, I guess, but in the first part, what is Wicca, the chapters are Wicca, Witchcraft, and Paganism, Divination, Nature, the Threefold Law, Morals, and the Wiccan Rede, Magick, Wiccan Paths, the Book of Shadows, and Deities. In my opinion, divination has no place being in this section, what is Wicca, because divination has nothing to do with Wicca. It is its own separate occult practice. And I think these sections need a very large reworking. So what is Wicca and how to get started should be closer together and not separated by 5 chapters of why you should explore Wicca. Also, there is like a large amount of run-on sentences and just sentences that were really hard to read. And I attribute this 100% to the editing because a good editor would have changed that a little bit while still being able to keep Harmony's voice within the book. But let me see if I can find something really quick to read to you. Okay, this right here really quick. It's all one sentence. After you have taken those first steps in creating and writing your Book of Shadows, you will enjoy building a relationship with your book as you record more and more, whether it is in the form of notes, drawings, found objects, clippings, artwork, or anything else that you choose to include. That's a really long sentence. So going through and just counting all of the words in that sentence, it's more than 40 words included in one sentence. And that's, in my opinion, too long. That could have been broken up into a couple of sentences while still being able to keep Harmony's voice within the book. So the editing and the way that it was written for me just made it really hard to read and comprehend. And there were certain parts of it where I had to go back and reread it to make sure that I understood what I had read because of the chunkiness and the clumpiness of some of the sentences and paragraphs. And then there are some things within this book that I think the information is just downright wrong. So the first thing that I have to talk about in regards to incorrect information is the Wiccan Rede. So let me read you her little paragraph that she has about the Wiccan Rede. She says the Wiccan Rede is a set of moral codes or key statements that Wiccans can use as principles to guide their lives. As I said, many but not all Wiccans choose to do this. Of course, it is entirely a personal choice. The Wiccan Rede is written in the form of a poem and is frequently written at the beginning of your Book of Shadows. The original author of the Wiccan Rede was influenced by several well-known Wiccans dating back many, many years, but in fact the author remains unknown. So that's just not true. And the version of the Rede that she has in here is from, I found it on a couple of different websites, but a quick Google search about the Wiccan Rede will turn up some basic information about where it comes from. The first thing about the Wiccan Rede is the fact that the Rede itself is not this long poem. The long poem that is included here is just a longer form that was actually first written by Lady Gwen Thompson. I'll talk about that in a second. But the Rede itself is just the ending, and it harm none, do what you will. And that was first recorded or first publicly recorded in 1964, I believe, by Doreen Valiente. So there's our first public acknowledgement of the Rede. Now, if she's talking about it being used for many, many years, maybe she's talking about the history of where the Rede might have come from in regards to Aleister Crowley's influence. And I will leave a link in the description or somewhere. I've covered this before, actually, so I'm not going to go into too much depth about why I disagree with that part of it. Now, the long form that probably inspired this particular poem in Harmony's book was actually published in 1974 in a magazine. That magazine was called Earth Religion News. Shortly after that publication, there was another poem that came out written by Lady Gwen Thompson. Now, the long form of the Rede by Lady Gwen Thompson was published in Green Egg magazine, and Lady Gwen Thompson actually attributed it to her grandmother. That is contested. However, the author is probably known. It's probably one of these particular people. Although it can be contested, it's incorrect to say that the Rede goes back many, many years and that the author is unknown, because a Google search will tell you who the author of this particular long form poem of the Rede is, and that's Lady Gwen Thompson. Another incorrect thing in her book, in my opinion, is the idea of shaman Wicca. Now, this is on page 47 of her book, and it's in this chapter where she is describing different paths within Wicca, and these would be considered different traditions. And she included something called shaman Wicca. Now, it's just full of incorrect information and a bit of cultural appropriation, in my opinion. So the section on shaman Wicca, it's just a paragraph. It says, for an extremely long time, shaman practice was seen as an individual path distinct from Wicca. Nowadays, being a shaman and a Wicca are thought of as being a very modern combination, despite the fact that uniting the two paths has been a tradition for longer than we could imagine. Shaman Wiccans follow the same typical traditions as other Wiccans, but they use their practices and techniques to connect with the spirit/sacred realms. Shaman Wiccans can reach different states of consciousness, speak to spirits from which they gain knowledge and answers, and predict the future. Shamans also practice both physical and spiritual healing. A shaman Wiccan can follow any deities they would like, but can also use spirits to help with magical workings. Again, shamans can be solitary or work within a group or coven. I don't know where she's getting this idea of shamanism, but as far as I'm aware, shamans are part of indigenous cultures, and it is a closed practice. You cannot be a shaman Wiccan because they're two completely separate paths. And shamanism has been really just ripped from the hands of the indigenous peoples and the native peoples that practice shamanism and whitewashed and just turned into something that it's not. So that's a completely separate topic for another day, but shaman Wicca is not a thing, in my opinion. So that's that. And then on page 15, so this is right in chapter 1. Like, it's this part that I have highlighted here. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see. So I have it highlighted here. When she defines paganism, she says a pagan is simply someone who follows a nature-based religion. Paganism. So I have 2 bones to pick with that. First off, paganism is not a religion. Paganism is an umbrella term that encompasses many different faiths and belief systems. And 2, the definition of paganism is not a nature-based religion. Paganism, as defined by the Webster Dictionary, is, let's see, what did I write down? A follower of a polytheistic religion. There are so many different polytheistic religions out there that being a pagan would not fall under Harmony's definition of a pagan as someone who follows a nature-based religion. Not all pagan faiths are nature-based. There are some out there that don't give a shit about nature, and their priority is something else. So that definition, as defined by the dictionary, is incorrect. And I think it is wrong to say that all pagans follow a nature-based religion, because then you're excluding some people who don't. Also, on the fact of what Wicca is and what the belief systems of Wicca are, there's really no mention of how deities and gods and goddesses are portrayed and worshipped and honored within Wicca. She basically says, so it's chapter 8. Chapter 8 is her chapter on deities and gods and goddesses. She says that there are so many deities that you could follow and many ways that you could choose to see and worship them. There are no right or wrong choices here. It simply depends on what feels right to you, which deities you feel drawn to, and also the path that you decide to take as a Wiccan. So traditionally, Wicca has a god and a goddess. Depending on the tradition, the names of those 2 deities are going to differ, but there's no mention within this section, within this chapter on gods and goddesses, the difference between the pantheons. I mean, she does go through and list several gods and goddesses and their aspects, like Apollo under the Greek section. She has written god of music, prophecy, truth, healing, the sun, and light. She lists Roman, Egyptian, Celtic, Norse, Slavic, Japanese, and African. I don't know enough about the Slavic, Japanese, or African deities to really speak on whether or not those are closed cultures. I'm not sure. So if you know the answer to that question, you can leave that in the comments below for me. But as an Irish pagan, the Celtic section kind of bugs me, because Celtic is not this whole like area. Celtic people include Irish, Welsh, Scottish, this whole section. And some of these deities are, only Irish or only Scottish or something. It's not this whole like catch-all term for all of the gods and goddesses in this area. But that's a personal nitpick of mine, being an Irish pagan. But there's not anything here that really describes how the gods and goddesses of Wicca are honored or worshipped or revered. So it's lacking really for me in the spiritual aspect. Then there's also something, it gave me pause, I guess. In her chapter on meditation, she's talking about mantra meditation. This is on page 77 for anybody that has the book. She says that it's a meditation during which you say a specific word or sound over and over again, and the vibration of the word coordinates your body and the universe. That's fine. But my issue is with the next paragraph. It says, I would recommend drawing down the moon for this and using the moon meditation technique to start with. So, with my experience in Wicca, drawing down the moon is a very particular ritual, and I don't know if this sentence here was just a lack of words and maybe she was trying to think of something else to say, but drawing down the moon sounded better or more, I don't know, there's a word that I'm thinking of. But I don't think that that was the right place to put drawing down the moon, because as far as I'm aware, drawing down the moon is a very particular ritual in which you are invoking the goddess into yourself. And in my opinion, you wouldn't do that just for a mantra meditation. You wouldn't bother the gods to bring her into yourself for your meditation. So I don't know if that was just a mince of words or what, but that bugged me. And then going along the lines of incorrect information and things that are just hard to prove or have been proven to be not true is on page 180. And this is chapter 20, where she's talking about the witch's alphabet. Now this is Theban. I don't know how to say it. I never actually say it out loud, but it is, if you Google witch's alphabet, it'll come up with that. And it's this here. Now she says, the symbols used are believed to possess immense power and to have magical properties, and for several centuries, witches have used this alphabet as their own. So I don't think that's true. She says that the origin of the alphabet is uncertain, but there is evidence that it was used in the 16th century in a book called 3 Books of the Occult Philosophy. So a quick Google search on the Theban alphabet comes up, and it says that it was first published in someone's book called Polygraphia in 1518. However, there is no evidence that I could find that says witches in particular have been using this alphabet for centuries. So if you can correct me on that, like if you have sources and stuff for that, leave them in the comments below, please, and I will add them to the description and let it be known that maybe in this section I was wrong if you've got sources that say otherwise. And that goes for everything in this video, because again, I'm going off of my own knowledge and my own experience with Wicca and my own ability to research and cite sources. Now, this last point that I have to make here is a little nitpick of mine. And it has to do with a spell that she has in her book. So this is page 163 and 164. It is called a banishing and purification spell. Now, for her being a vegan and really caring about the environment, and for a lot of Wiccans really caring about the environment, I would hope nobody would actually do the end of this spell. Because the last step, step 7, now this is a jar spell. So, you place all of your ingredients in the jar, and then you do what you're supposed to do with the jar. But step 7 of this spell says, place or throw the jar into the water, and in this case, she's talking about a river, the beach, or somewhere appropriate for disposing of this situation. Place or throw the jar into the water, and then turn your back on it. Throw your offering over your shoulder into the water too, then walk away and don't turn back or return to the area until the next full moon arrives in the following month. Please don't put a glass jar full of a bunch of stuff into a flowing body of water, or any body of water for that matter. Like, I don't see that as doing spell work. I see that as littering. Do not throw a jar or something that is not biodegradable into anywhere on the planet. That's not being eco-friendly. That's not doing anything to help the planet except for disposing of your junk in the beach or in the ocean or in a river. Please don't do that. There are a million other ways that you can go about doing a banishing spell that don't require you to leave a jar in a river or the ocean for it to be possibly carried away and possibly be a harm to the natural environment. So don't do that. All in all, I really, really wanted to like this book because Harmony is such a lovely person, but I just can't. I mean, with my experience in Wicca and all that I know about the path and the faith, and with my academic background, I guess, and my ability to research and use my sources appropriately, I can't like this book. I appreciate her effort, but I don't appreciate the information that was pushed forward in this book and her lack of sources. In my opinion, 4 books, 3 of them by the same author, and a couple of websites don't denote research and accurate information. And I have the same bone to pick, honestly, with a lot of books about Wicca. That's not just Harmony. That is, you know, I have the same bone to pick with some of Scott Cunningham's books and Buckland's books. And it's just, it might be a personal preference of mine that, you know, sources are cited and we're being sure that we're being given accurate information and that we can trace the source of that information. But this book really fell short for me. And it really shows me that Harmony, even though she's a lovely person, she is a little bit inexperienced, in my opinion, to really have gone through and written a book. And I was expecting this book to be, you know, I wasn't expecting it to be this some huge, well-researched, you know, 5 pages of bibliography or anything like that. But with the title of Wicca, A Modern Guide to Witchcraft and Magick, I really expected more out of this book. I mean, my favorite part about the book is the cover. So if you want to get the book for yourself, I'll leave links in the description below. I'm actually, this book itself is listed in my shop because it's not a book that I really need to keep around. So if you want to get a used copy from me, go ahead and check out my shop. It is going to be this particular one, so it does have some like highlights or whatever in it. But yeah, 2 out of 5 stars. Final opinion, do not recommend. So yeah. If you have any books that you would like for me to review, leave them in the comments below and I will do my best to review them. Please know that this book review does not encompass my entire opinion of Harmony herself. I think she's a lovely person and she does great work and she's got an amazing channel, but this book did really fall short for me. So until next time, I will see you in my next video. Bye for now.